It is now my extreme pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Treda Grayson. Dr. Grayson is an environmental protection specialist in the Office of Water, Office of Wetlands, Oceans, and Watersheds at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. She's the program manager for the Deepwater Horizon National Resource Damage Assessment Program, which supports and carries out EPA's trustee responsibilities for restoration in the Gulf of Mexico following the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Her prior experience at EPA includes supporting tribes in developing environmental capacity through the administration of the Indian Environmental General Assistance, leading the National Coastal Condition Assessment, and providing technical support to states, tribes, and other entities to develop and adopt biological, nutrient, and aquatic life criteria for water quality standards development. Treda is an active member of the Coastal and Estuarine Research Federation. She serves as co-chair of the Broadening Participation Council and as a 2021 to 2025 governing board member at large. She is the current program co-chair of the Atlantic Estuarine Research Society, or AERS, and has previously served as AERS president, treasurer, and membership chair. She's a 2009 Environmental Leadership Program Senior Fellow, a 2015 Prince George's County 40 Under 40 honoree in Science and Engineering, and a director of the Coastal Carolina University Alumni Board. Treda holds a Ph.D. in Environmental Science and Policy from George Mason University, an MS degree in Environmental Sciences and Policy from Johns Hopkins University, and a BS degree in Marine Science with Biology and German minors from Coastal Carolina University. So we're incredibly pleased to have such a wonderful, prestigious keynote speaker today. And I'll just note that we will have some time for Q&A after Treda's presentation. Please feel free to enter questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation.
Good afternoon and good morning to some. I just had to take a moment to collect myself listening to Susan read my bio because as you'll see from the title, I've done a lot of reflecting over the past few weeks preparing for this and looking at where I am and where I've come from. It's kind of it's very striking. I've been through a lot, and so what I'm going to do today is kind of share some of my reflections. I'm one of the students of color or former students of color that has made it through, but not unscathed, not without a story to tell, but it helps set the stage for doing the work that we're assembled to do here today and over the next few months and next year even. And so I thought, I'll be a little personal here, but you'll see why and see where I'm going with this. And just in general, the whole concept of this project come in. The what of this work is really my why, which is why I'm so excited to be a part of this. I'm not a practitioner in the diversity, equity, inclusion, justice space, by training, but it's a lived experience for me. And so I'm very passionate about it because I want to have that legacy and make opportunity for those that come after me. So that's where we'll start. So this is the beginning. This is Treda, circa Dr. Grayson. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia suburbs. My family, regular middle-class family. My dad worked in a factory. My mom did corporate banking in downtown Richmond. Both just went military, high school, and then went to work. So I never really had that exposure of you're going to go to college or this having my family do that. But I knew that was something I wanted to do. And I grew up in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and with that, I grew up not far from the James River. Spent a lot of time in the river, on the river, in creeks, tributaries, fishing, crabbing, boating, all of those things. That was a regular weekend activity for us. And I had my neighbors who that's my sister and I in the lower left, who we did a lot of these adventures with. but it set the stage for my love of the water, love of the ocean. And it's one of those things that I've always, I used to read encyclopedias for fun, and I would read all the ocean ones, all the ocean um, issues. So, I was not the normal kid by any means. When I was about 6 years old, we took a trip out to California for two weeks. And while there, we went to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And it was there where I had that first exposure of what a marine biologist is and what they do. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And at that age, I said, I declared, I want to be a marine biologist. And I told my parents I either want to be a marine biologist or an astronaut. And they really didn't know what to do with that, but they were very encouraging. And they're like, if that's what you want to do, we're going to support you. And so, I had that exposure, but I want you to keep in mind that there are not always students, particularly students of color, that have that exposure or even that support to do something like that. Most often than not, we're brought up to say, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a teacher, but a scientist, no one really, thinks about that. But I was fortunate enough to, for them and my family to be very supportive of what I wanted. And I was happy enough to find my way a little south to Coastal Carolina University. That's where I went to undergrad. And they have an excellent marine science program, for undergraduate students. And I applied, I accepted sight unseen. I was like, I'm going to Coastal, this is what I'm going to do. And it was a great experience, best 4 years ever. I learned a lot, again, a lot of exposure. And I'll come back to this in a second. But while there, I didn't really, I had my lab mates, some of my classmates. At the time, I was one of 2 Black students in the marine science program. The other student ended up being my roommate, and we're still like the best of friends to now. We both work at EPA as well. But it was hard, I was able to navigate because I had her, I had some other students to kind of navigate this space. Always being the only one, it's kind of hard. It, leaves you in some uncomfortable situations or you feel out of place, but I did not let that deter me. And I always looked for what's new, what's next, what should I do? And while at Coastal, I was able to take advantage of research experience for undergraduate programs, the first of which I did at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, one summer doing benthic ecology, and the next summer I did biological oceanography at the University of Hawaii. And very two total ends of the spectrum, but it gave me my love, really told me I was where I wanted to be. A lot of got hands-on out in the field, in the lab, got exposure to be able to attend scientific conferences. And in fact, I love showing this picture. The top left is my first ever, at the time, Earth conference, now SURF. And from my summer project, I got to attend and present my research. And if you notice, I don't know if you guys can zoom in, but zoom into the lower left of that picture, and you might see someone maybe Susan Park. That's where Susan and I first met as undergrad students. So as you can see, and there's other people in that photo, the bonds were established long ago, and I still have a lot of great friends and colleagues from that experience. In the bottom right, that was the group that I was with in Hawaii. Again, I was the only Black person, but there were others of color in that group. But it was a great bunch, and we're still friends to this day. But from those experiences, and finishing up at Coastal was very rigorous. I knew that I did not want to go right into academia. And so I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when it was time to graduate. And I was fortunate enough, based on connections made through my REUs, the program director at the time sent me an email and I learned about a program at EPA called the EPA Intern Program, which I applied for and actually got in. And so I started right after graduation. I had like a summer break, and then I started working and moved to EPA, moved to DC area and started working at EPA. And this is nothing. Um, this is nothing that a marine scientist would expect. It was a cubicle farm. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? But it was cool to get to know the issues from a different perspective, like the application of the science. And while I came in an administrative office at the time, I was able to work my way into the Office of Water, where I had spent the majority of my career. And then Susan mentioned some of the places I've been. But one of the ways in which I got to bring in my love of marine science and bentham ecology and all of those things is the time period where I was responsible for leading the National Coastal Condition Assessment. So these were all the things that I was doing, that I'd done as an undergraduate student. And at this time, I had decided I was back in graduate school, started graduate school. And so the data that I used for my dissertation was actually the program that I was sending crews out to collect data for at the same time. So it's kind of cool to be in charge of data collection and then also use that data for my dissertation. But yeah, you never really get that experience, especially at EPA, being out in the field. Well, I should say EPA in DC, where, in DC is where the programs are developed, and then you go out into our regional offices and that's where they're implemented. But this is one of those sweet spots where I got to do a little bit of both. And yeah, so I got to dabble in my love of field science and sometimes being in the lab, but I got to go back to the office and work on assessing data and figuring out what we could do with that. And what does that mean for assessing the condition of the nation's waters? Just here are a couple of photos. We used to have a research vessel at EPA. We no longer have the Bold, but we'd spend many summers out gathering information and data and just, really merging my love of the science and my love of the application of the science together. And all of those experiences, from the National Coastal Condition Assessment to working in the American Indian Environmental Office, I've worked in pesticides, I've worked in stormwater enforcement. All of those experiences kind of culminated in the work that I do now, and that's doing restoration work in the Gulf of Mexico following the oil spill of 2010. So we're part of the Natural Resource Damage Assessment. We're EPA as a trustee, and so we are responsible for restoring the natural resources that were injured by the spill. And so this has been really cool experience, because it draws in all of the experiences that I've had to date, all in one program. And it's any part of the day I could be doing budgeting or working on our annual budget for the program, or moving money around. And then I'm reading a technical document or writing up a research plan or a restoration, or reviewing a restoration plan. So it's a great merge of all the things that I love. But throughout this, and it's not really a but with that, some of the work that I've done, I've always, and I said this earlier, I've had to embrace, being uncomfortable or the discomfort of kind of feeling out of place. Luckily, I've been one of those people who, if there's something I want to do, I'm going to do it, and I'll find a way. It always makes it better when you have a support group or a mentor to help you along. From preschool all through K through 12, undergrad, master's, Ph.D, I've always been in a majority setting. I've also always found, I know Catalina and I talk about this, we find our people, and you find the people that you can connect with and kind of help keep you, going and give you like a gut check, and keep you lifted. I have amassed a network of friends and colleagues of all races, colors, and creed, and it's amazing that this tribe that I've amassed that has kept me going. I said here, the differences, me being different, that was made apparent early on, elementary school even. And it's still kind of the same today. I can walk into a room for a meeting, well, pre-COVID. And I've been talking to someone on the phone or, via email. And then when I walk in the door, and they find out who I am, they're kind of like, you're the person I've been talking to, it kind of throws people off. But yeah, it is what it is. And we've talked about this in smaller groups before, that, you have to be uncomfortable. And I bring this up because some of the conversations and some of the work that we need to do to help make a change and remove some of these barriers, they're going to require uncomfortable conversations. And so I just want you all to reflect on, no one likes to feel that way, but you're going to have to push the norms to get to that place so that we can start to make some strides. And as someone who has had to walk around feeling uncomfortable a lot of the time, it's not so bad. It's just, it is what you have to do. And again, it heightened my awareness for what's going on around me, but it did not attract me from doing what I wanted to do. I credit numerous programs, mentors, and networks for helping me get to where I am now. I've participated in the ASLO Minorities Program. I was a Hall of Honor Scholar when that program, NSF funded program, to increase the number of students of color, obtaining Ph.D s. I did the MS Ph.D s program that was started by Dr. Shanti Johnson, and that's where I met some of my mentors that I still call on to today, mentors and now colleagues that I still keep in touch with. And Sister Mentors is another program that I relied on heavily going through graduate school. That it's a group that supports women of color pursuing PhDs. So we would support each other and set monthly goals. And then we'd also mentor young girls of color to encourage them to do well in school and provide role models for them to maybe say one day, hey, I want to do that as well. And again, mentors in every level. A lot of people talk about, well, is mentoring important? What level of engagement should you have as a mentor? And it varies. But I think the mentoring is so important because I've seen students, myself included, get physically ill from the stress of going through the graduate school process. And I'll touch on that in just a second. But the last half of what I wanted to talk to you all about, I'm telling you why I care about doing this work, but I hope it gives you some consideration of why we should all care about this. In the past year and a half, the social and racial unrest in this country highlighted the injustices and inequalities on so many levels: health disparities, racial disparities, educational disparities, climate disparities, just environmental disparities. And so I don't see how we can turn a blind eye to that. Like it's in our face, and we have to do something about this. For those, most participants here today, who are somehow related to the coastal ocean sector, where we do our work, where we do our research, where we focus our interests, our coastal areas, and the demographic makeup of coastal areas is primarily of people of color, and they're not necessarily the people who are doing the research or always consulted on the research that's being done or what's happening in their communities. And so that's really important to me because that's my community, that's my people, that I have a vested interest in making sure that their well-being is taken care of. There are still, it is 2021, and there are still multiple stories and accounts of graduate school turmoil, and they keep coming up. Just about a month ago, we were at a Rising Tides program, and one of the And that's the mentoring program for SURF. And one of the speakers that we invited was telling an account of how she was stressed out in grad school and made to feel like she didn't belong, and almost left and was encouraged to stay. And the macro and microaggressions that many students, especially students of color, go through. It's staggering. It's really staggering. I know students who just couldn't take it anymore and walked away from the field altogether. There's some who finished degrees and once they're done, don't even want anything to do with it. And that's lost talent that we have here, that that's lost opportunity, lost innovation, lost perspectives. And we really have to try to prevent that from happening. Retention is a major issue, and a lot of the program and I know we're going to talk about this over the next two sessions. We have a lot of programs out here that do a great job of attracting students of color and getting them in the door. And I think sometimes what happens in some programs is we get the students in the door and then don't provide them with the support and the resources and the perspectives that they need to survive. And to keep them there, not only keep them in the program, but keep them in the field afterwards. And it's more than checking the box to say we have diversity. Diversity goes beyond what you say on paper. It's about the intent, it's about the action, it's about who you have helping to make decisions and who you refer to. And there are still, and Flo mentioned this earlier, there's still systematic issues with bias and racism. They're still there. They're embedded in our educational structure. And so, in a lot of our program structures, knowingly and unknowingly. And so we've got to do the hard work to dismantle that. This was a real personal keynote, but I'll give you some numbers because I know there's scientists here. Just a few stats here. And I'm drawing these from Harris et al. This is a paper that came out earlier this year, led by Laura Harris, who's here on the line. Again, about why we should care. So in 2020, US Census, the Black African-American population was 13.4% and 18.5% Hispanic. Okay, so keep that in mind. Looking at educational data from Department of Education, between 2010 and 2019, when you look at both undergraduate and graduate degrees combined, like completion rates, it was fairly flat, like 1% for Black African-American students. And it rose from 2% to 13% for Hispanic students. It's still really low when you look at the actual population demographics of these two. And then if you go a little further in terms of PhDs, between 1973 and 2016, there were less than 8% of the almost 5,000, just over 5,000 ocean science PhDs awarded to non-white and non-Asian students. And actually, I'd like to bring to note that I'm not even in that number, because even though my PhD, the work of my PhD was benthic ecology and marine science, it was under the umbrella of environmental science and policy. So I'm not even counted in that number, but I'm still a marine scientist. So, that's something to be said. So after, getting a little personal with you, and we can talk about this more in Q&A, I have my challenge to you all as we go through the next few days, this day and the next charrette and the next year with the focus groups, is a couple of things. So I ask you, as we do this work, think about the community that we're building. How best to do that? How best do we support a broader community of students, especially students of color, to stay in this field and want to be here? How many young children can we expose, and they have that twinkle in their eye? How can we engage them and keep them engaged and hopefully have them join us one day? Secondly, be open. Openness is really important. Have open and honest dialogue and communication. not only today, tomorrow, but when you go back to your institutions. Have those difficult conversations. They are hard, they're difficult for a reason, but they must be had if we're going to make a change and take away some of these barriers. Think about meaningful mentoring. Mentoring is so important. And with the Rising Tides program we just did in SURF, we also did a mentoring workshop where we helped the mentors gain the skills that they needed to be best served to, best of service to the mentees. And so mentoring it's more than just, I'm just going to help you get through the program or the process. It's more than that. And we need to do it in a meaningful way. Also focus on equality. Where are things unequal? Where can we level the playing field? Where can we give more to where things are lacking so that we can kind of help bring everybody to the same place and feel, empowered to not only stay in this field, but then bring others to the field. Also, do it with intent. Be intentional about how you set up your programs, how you implement your programs, how you find your students, how you set the programs up. The intent is really important. And lastly, help build a network of professionals and educators and collaborators, which will make for a better and holistic environment in our field. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you, Treda. Virtual everyone, please give a virtual round of applause for that excellent personal story. I think personal stories are so important in this work and really getting, a personal feeling for the reasons why we're doing the work that we're doing. So I want to acknowledge that there's been some great comments and discussion in the chat. So I encourage folks to look there. Please put your questions in the Q&A box, or if you prefer, use the reactions button to raise your hand and we will get to those questions. If you don't mind, Treda, I'd like to start with one.
Sure.
It's about mentorship, which you talked about a lot, and I feel like you were humble in not mentioning how much mentoring you do of the next generation of coastal and ocean and marine force. So I'm curious, how do you go about finding a good mentor, and what makes a good mentor in your opinion?
That's a good question. Gosh, what makes a good mentor? I think someone who, you want someone who will listen. And I think something we talk about, especially, if you have a student who's coming to you for help, trying to navigate a difficult situation or a difficult process. If you have, we talk about power and agency. If a mentor that can help do that for the student, expand your network and your connections. Someone who can listen really well, and be able to follow up. And I have mentees that I keep up with quite a bit. And sometimes you ask me about being a good mentor and then how you find a good mentor. But in the last 2 years, I've actually had mentees come to me. So I've had to kind of navigate that. And I rarely say no. I rarely say no, because I think about what I could be doing or where I could be if I'd had mentors early on. Maybe sidestep some field mines and stuff. So sometimes, I will seek out someone, but 9 times out of 10 they seek me out. And I think it's finding someone who understands what the student's going through or has a perspective that of understanding is very helpful.
Thank you. And I have no doubt you rarely say no to, to folks who want you to mentor them. I did get another question. If you could tell us a little bit about how intersectionality has influenced your journey.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. I didn't even touch that. Where to start? Yeah, so being female, you know, in different areas is always a challenge. You know, doing field work, you're not expected to be able to do the hard stuff, or lift the equipment. Sometimes I can't, but I'm going to at least try safely. I think one of the best examples of how I deal with intersectionality, so being a Black female, some of the work that I travel or used to travel a lot for work, and doing the National Aquatic Resource Survey work led me, and even some of the travel work that I've done has led me to some very remote areas of the country. And it's nothing like getting to the town you're going to, and you get out and you go check into your hotel, or you're going to go to dinner with your colleagues, and you immediately recognize that you're the only one, and so you're like, oh, okay, how's this going to go? I'm always have to be on alert. And luckily I have colleagues who also can tune into this, and they can feel like when I'm feeling uneasy, it's like, okay, well, we're going to go somewhere else, or this doesn't feel right for us too. A good example, well, something where I wish this happened when I was younger, and I wish I'd had more gumption to speak up. We had a national meeting in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And if anyone knows Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, because I do all the research before I go. It was a hotbed for Ku Klux Klan activity in Idaho. And I'm like, why are we having this meeting here? Like, I was terrified the whole time I'm walking around the town. The town was great, and the meeting was great, but I was always on edge because I had to, constantly think, well, what if something happens to me? So the intersectionality is something I don't know how to divorce it from I can't parse it out. It is who I am. And so depending on what the issue is, I'm looking at it from a gender lens. And then sometimes I'm looking at it from being a Black lens. It is what it is. And I don't know how to not deal with it.
Yeah, no, it's a good reminder that we all come with a lot of different identities that make up our one person.
Yeah.
We got another great question. How do we support mentors who don't share the lived experiences of many historically marginalized and excluded folks to develop the skills to mentor more effectively?
I think providing resources, and it's not even give somebody a book, go read this book on how to be a mentor. It's not that. And it's not just go to a workshop either, though I think workshops are great because they give you good techniques that need to be practiced. I think also just developing a level of awareness, looking at where your blind spots might be in terms of dealing, with a person that's different from you. Have those conversations with them and kind of talk about, well, you have to have an awareness that just because things happen for you in one way, that's not the way it happens for others. And so having some awareness of that and understanding that there could be some differences is the first part. But I'm not prescribing that you can only have a mentor that looks like you. That's not the case. I think some of my best mentors are ones that don't look like me, that give me a perspective. And as they are teaching me, I'm teaching them as well.
Yeah, I love that point. Mutual learning. Mentors have a lot to learn as much as mentees do.
Absolutely.